The moment my daughter-in-law slapped my wrist so hard, the coffee cup flew from my hand and shattered across the kitchen floor. I knew something inside my home had died, and it wasn't the porcelain. "Don't touch my espresso machine, Helen!" she screamed as if I were some unwanted intruder, instead of the woman who owned the house she lived in for free. What broke me wasn't her voice. It was the silence behind her. My son, my only child, sat 3 feet away, staring into his phone, pretending he hadn't heard the slap, the scream, or the sound of his mother's dignity hitting the tile. That was the moment I realized the people I loved most were planning something far worse than cruelty. They were planning to erase me. And before I tell you what I discovered next, tell me, would you have stayed quiet or walked away? My name is Helen Carter. I'm 63 years old, and I spent most of my life believing that love, especially a mother's love, could survive anything. But nothing prepared me for the morning I learned just how wrong I was. It happened in the kitchen of the home my late husband Mark and I rebuilt with our bare hands, a quiet 2-story cedar-sided house tucked inside Maplewood, Oregon. Every beam, every nail, every white-painted cabinet held a memory of the life we once had. And that morning, all I could do was watch those memories shatter across the floor. It started with the sound of a cup hitting tile. Not a gentle sound, a violent one. A sharp, brittle crack, followed by a spray of scalding coffee splashing across the white cabinets I'd painted with Mark the summer he was recovering from chemo. I froze. My wrist still burned from the slap that sent the cup flying. "Don't touch my espresso machine, Helen!" The voice came sharp and high, cutting straight through the morning silence. I looked up. There she stood, my daughter-in-law, Brianna, in her expensive skin-tight workout set hair, in a perfect high ponytail face, contorted with disgust, as if touching the same air I breathed offended her. I was just wiping the spill from yesterday," I whispered. She scoffed, folded her toned arms across her chest, and leaned forward like a scolding principal. "I don't care what you were doing," she hissed. "You're not the maid. Actually, worse. At least a maid knows her place." Her words hit harder than her hand, but the worst pain didn't come from her. It came from the man sitting just 3 feet away at the kitchen island, my son Daniel, my only child. He sat there eating avocado toast, scrolling through his phone, pretending he didn't hear a thing. Not the slap, not the shattered cup, not the humiliation ringing through his own kitchen. I whispered, "Daniel." He didn't look up, not even once. Something in me cracked then, not a sound, not a bone, something deeper, something I hadn't realized was still fragile. I crouched down slowly, my knees aching to gather the broken porcelain pieces. The coffee soaked into the hem of my jeans. My reflection stared back at me in the glossy, white tile, pale skin, thinning white hair, eyes ringed with exhaustion. I didn't recognize the woman kneeling on the floor of her own home. Brianna's voice cut in sharply. "And don't leave a mess. We have people coming later." People. She meant her friends, her shiny group of Maplewood socialites, the kind who bragged about Pilates classes and designer handbags while judging everyone else for sport. I didn't answer. I just kept cleaning. "That's right," she muttered. "Silent is better. Makes things easier around here." Then she spun on her heel and walked out, her perfume trailing behind her like a cloud of artificial sweetness. When the door shut, the kitchen fell quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful, but empty. Daniel finally stood, placed his half-full plate in the sink without a word, and headed upstairs to his home office. Not even a glance. Not even, "Are you okay, Mom?" I didn't know what hurt worse, Brianna's cruelty or my son's cowardice. That afternoon, Brianna's friends arrived for brunch. Ashley, Loren, and Madison women who wore diamonds to casual gatherings. The house buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses. I kept myself in the kitchen, preparing raspberry iced tea and arranging charcuterie boards the way Brianna instructed. I stepped onto the patio, carrying a crystal pitcher one Mark had given me on our 25th anniversary when I heard it. "Who's the older woman?" Ashley's voice thin sharp. "Oh," her Brianna smirked. "That's just Daniel's mom. She stays here, you know, guilt and all." He feels bad sending her to a senior home. They all laughed, like it was funny, like I wasn't standing right there. But then came the real blow. I just hope she doesn't slow us down, Brianna whispered loudly. Old people are unpredictable. Laughter erupted again. My hands trembled. The pitcher slipped, smashing violently against the patio. Water and ice scattered across the stone like spilled diamonds. Silence fell. All eyes turned to me. Seriously, Brianna snapped. You can't do anything right. I'm so sorry I bent down. But she swatted my hand away again. Don't touch it. You'll cut yourself. And then guess who has to deal with that? Me. Just disappear. Helen. Please. And then the moment that would haunt me, Daniel stepped out from the sliding door. He saw everything. The broken glass, my shaking hands, Brianna's fury, the humiliation dripping from my face, and he froze. Not to defend me, not to scold her, just to stand there, useless, silent. I realized then that silence can slice deeper than any blade. I cleaned up every shard, one by one, and when I stood again, something inside me felt different, calmer, colder, sharper. Like a woman reaching the point where she stops begging to be respected and begins planning how she'll take her power back. But before I tell you what I found later that night, the thing that changed everything, let me ask you something. If you think Brianna went too far, type 10 in the comments. And tell me, what would you have done if you were standing in my shoes? That night, long after the patio had emptied and Brianna's friends had driven off in their glossy SUVs, I stood alone in the kitchen, wiping down the counters. The house felt cold, not because of the temperature, but because something was missing. Warmth. Safety. The sense that I still belonged here. The moonlight spilled through the window, reflecting off the spotless granite countertop. And for the first time in years, I saw myself clearly. Not as a burden. Not as the old woman who stays here, but as Helen Carter. A woman with a history. A woman with a spine. A woman who had once built a life from the dirt up with her husband, and someone was trying to take that life from me. When the house finally fell silent, I walked slowly down the hall to the small bedroom Brianna had assigned me, what used to be the storage room. Boxes still lined the closet. My name wasn't on a single thing in this space, but I wasn't looking for space. I was looking for truth. I knelt beside the old cedar chest I'd brought with me years ago. The one thing Brianna hadn't dared to throw out because it didn't match the aesthetic. Inside, under folded quilts and old photo albums, was the leather-bound sketchbook Mark had given me the Christmas before he died. My jewelry designs, my real identity. And tucked inside the front pocket was his handwriting, shaky from chemo, but strong in message. If the world ever forgets who you are, Helen, promise me you won't. My throat tightened. I pressed the note against my chest and whispered, I'm trying, Mark. I really am. When I opened my eyes, I noticed something I hadn't earlier. A drawer in Brianna's vanity near the open doorway, slightly ajar. I never snooped, never had to, but something pulled me toward it, a strange instinct, like the house itself was trying to tell me a secret. Inside the drawer lay a folder, blue and crisp, with Daniel's name typed neatly across the top. But underneath was Brianna's. And inside that folder were bank statements, loan applications, approval requests, a real estate listing contract, my address, my house, my signature only. It wasn't mine. I stared at the sloppy loop in the forged signature. My heart dropped into my stomach. They weren't planning to send me to a senior home. They were planning to sell my home right out from under me. The home Mark and I had built. The home where I raised Daniel. The home that held every good memory I had left. My hands trembled, but not with fear. With clarity. I closed the drawer quietly, carefully, because now I was no longer the woman being erased. I was the woman watching them reveal exactly how cruel they could be. The next morning, I made breakfast like I always did. Blueberry pancakes, bacon, fresh coffee. But my mind wasn't in the kitchen. It was in the drawer. The forged signature. The betrayal. Daniel came in first. He looked tired, older than 35, shadows under his eyes. "Morning, Mom," he muttered. I studied him. Was he part of this? Did he know? Did he care? Then Brianna strutted in, wearing a silky pink robe, yawning loudly, as if the world owed her rest. "Helen, wash my blue blouse before noon," she said without looking at me. I dried my hands. "The washer's open. You can do it yourself." She froze. Daniel froze. Even the air froze. She turned slowly, eyes narrowing. "What did you just say?" I said, I repeated calmly. "You're capable of washing your own clothes." For a moment, the room felt electric, charged dangerous. But instead of exploding, Brianna pulled back her lips in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You must be losing it," she whispered. "Careful. Daniel and I might have to make decisions for you." A threat, thinly veiled, ugly. She didn't know I had already found the decisions she was planning, and that I had one of my own. When they left the house later that morning, I waited for the sound of their car fading down the street before walking to the basement, my old jewelry workshop long covered in dust. Behind the workbench in the corner, Mark had once built a secret compartment. I found exactly what I prayed would be there. The original deed, the house title, the insurance documents, Mark's will, and a sealed envelope with my name on it. My hands shook as I opened it. "Helen," the letter read. "If Daniel ever lets someone treat you less than you are, don't leave this home. Make them leave." Mark, I pressed the letter to my lips. Tears filled my eyes, not of sadness, but of resolve. I knew what I had to do. I took the deed, the will, and the insurance papers and headed straight to the Maplewood Town Center. To the notary office, to the only man I trusted, Edward Collins, Mark's old friend. He examined the papers, brows lifting. "You want to donate the entire house, Helen. Are you sure?" "More than sure," I said. "I want it to become a home for seniors who have nowhere to go. A safe place. Something better than what I have here." He nodded slowly, eyes softening. "You've always had more courage than any of us. When can it be done?" I asked. "Today," he said. "If you sign now?" So, I signed. In ink. With steady hands. And with that single stroke of my pen, the house was no longer Daniel's future, or Brianna's asset, or my prison. It became freedom, mine. And soon it would become someone else's too. But before I tell you what happened when Daniel and Brianna found out, let me ask you, if you were in my place, would you have done the same? Type 10, if you think they deserved what was coming. When I returned from the notary's office that afternoon, the sky over Maplewood had already turned a bruised shade of gray. The kind of sky that tells you something is about to break. I set the grocery bags on the counter, humming quietly, while preparing dinner, meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and cornbread. Mark's favorites. I wasn't sure why I felt drawn to make them. Maybe because part of me needed courage, and his memory always gave it to me. I cooked in silence, waiting for the storm I knew was coming. It arrived faster than thunder. The front door burst open so hard it hit the hallway wall. Daniel and Brianna strode inside, their faces pale, frantic, angry. "What did you do?" Brianna shrieked, waving the letter Edward had handed them earlier. "You donated the house, our house. You can't do that." I calmly wiped my hands on a kitchen towel. "It was never your house," I said softly. "It was mine." Daniel stepped forward, his voice cracking. "Mom, how could you? Where are we supposed to go?" I looked at him, not the adult he'd become, but the boy I'd raised. The boy who once held my hand crossing the street. The boy who once cried when he cracked his first baseball bat. And the boy who had stood by silently while his wife humiliated me. "You'll find your way," I said. Just like I had to. Brianna let out a bitter laugh. "You're insane. Actually insane. This is elder abuse against yourself." I turned to her slowly. "No? Elder abuse," I said quietly, "is what you've done in this home every day." Her face reddened. She opened her mouth to argue, but I wasn't afraid anymore. "You slapped me," I said. "You mocked me. You tried to sell my home. You treated me like a dirty dish you could throw out when you were done." Silence. "And Daniel," I breathed in deeply. "You let it happen." He flinched as if I'd struck him. I walked to the table and placed the neatly packed suitcase beside the chair. "I'm leaving tonight," I told them. "Not because you pushed me out. but because I choose to walk out with my dignity." Brianna scoffed. "And where exactly are you going, Helen? To Carter House?" I answered. "A place where people respect one another. A place that will live on long after this house is gone." Daniel stepped forward suddenly. His voice broke. "Mom, please, don't go." I stared into his eyes that once looked at me with love, now fogged with guilt. "I begged for your voice, Daniel," I whispered. "I begged for you to stand up for me. You gave me silence. So now, I'm giving you mine." I walked past him. The door closed behind me with a soft click. And just like that, for the first time in years, I could breathe. Carter House welcomed me with warm lamps, soft music, and the scent of cinnamon rolls drifting from the community kitchen. The director, Ms. Eleanor Brooks, hugged me as if she had been waiting for me all along. "Here," she said gently, "you're safe." And she was right. For the first time in so long, I felt safe enough to simply be myself. I taught jewelry making in the art room. I planted flowers in the courtyard. I listened to old stories and told a few of my own. My soul, once bruised and tired, slowly found its softness again. But the biggest surprise came 2 weeks later. Eleanor found me in the garden hands, deep in potting soil. "Helen, you have a visitor," she said. My heart skipped. When I walked toward the wisteria tree, I saw him, Daniel, thinner, humbled, hands in his pockets, shoulders slumped. "Mom," he whispered. I didn't speak. The breeze did rustling the purple blossoms above us. He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, I know saying it isn't enough. So, I'm not here to apologize. I'm here to work." He gestured toward a toolbox at his feet. I asked Ms. Brooks if I could volunteer. Fix the broken benches, repair the doors, do something useful. I stared at him, really looked at him this time. His hands weren't soft anymore. They were calloused, marked by real labor. "Mom," he said again, "I want to earn back what I broke. Not the house. You. Us." Something warm cracked open in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. Over the next weeks, Daniel showed up every day, sanding wood, repairing shelves, bringing fresh flowers for the residents. He laughed with them, carried groceries, built little birdhouses for the courtyard. He wasn't pretending. He wasn't performing. He was trying. And one evening, he brought me a gift, a wooden bench he'd crafted from reclaimed pieces of our old dining table. Carved across the backrest were the words, "Strength doesn't shout. It endures." My breath caught. I touched the carving with trembling fingers. "Dad would be proud," he said softly. Tears finally escaped my eyes, not of pain, but release. Months passed. Seasons softened. And one early spring morning, I sat on that bench under the wisteria tree, the sun warming my cheeks. I closed my eyes. I thought of Mark, of my son as a little boy, of my own heart, once bruised now, finally at peace. And somewhere between one breath and the next, I drifted gently into the quiet. Daniel found me there, resting hands, folded face, serene sketchbook beside me. He didn't scream. He didn't collapse. He simply sat beside me, took my hand, and whispered, "Thank you, Mom, for teaching me everything, even in your silence." Later, he placed a small plaque on the bench in loving memory of Helen Carter, who chose dignity and taught us all what love really is. And under the wisteria blossoms I stayed, not as a victim, not as the old woman in the way, but as a mother who finally found her peace and left behind her strength. Before you go, let me ask you, how did this story make you feel? If you stayed with me until the end, type 100 in the comments. Tell me what country you're watching from, and if this touched your heart, please share the video so others can feel it too.